Hello my lovely, Sarah Jane Critchley here, author of A Different Joy, The Parent's Guide to Living Better with Autism, Dyslexia, ADHD and more. Now this is just a quick little ditty. I wanted to talk to you today about how you can tell if school's going wrong. Because not all of us have children who will explain what's going on, who will explain how they feel and will come home and lay out exactly what happened during the day. I don't know about you, but if you've got teenagers in the house or you've got somebody who doesn't like talking a lot to adults, then generally if you ask what's gone on, they'll say stuff. I love a bit of stuff. So I say, well, what sort of stuff? And you get no further. So if something's going wrong, you need to know how you can tell. So how can you tell? What do you do? How do you find out? So there are a number of different ways. I've got 5 little ways for you to know what might be an indication if things are going wrong at school. So the first thing is look at your young person's behaviour. Is what they are doing now different to the way that they normally behave? And often we'll find that either somebody will shut down altogether or they'll suddenly become far more explosive. So if you have someone who is suddenly becoming very overwhelmed and struggling to cope, they may have far more meltdowns. They may completely lose it. Some people will trash their rooms, or they might even be very withdrawn, or some will actually start to self-harm, so they might be picking skin or cutting. So you need to be aware that children's behaviour will change, or young people's behaviour will change if they're feeling stressed. So that's one of the first things to look at, especially if you don't have the relationship where you're talking with them all the time. And it can be really difficult to have that sort of conversation, so watch out for that. The second thing to look at is, are their grades changing? So are they suddenly doing dramatically worse? If they've been a straight A student all along and all of a sudden their grades are dropping through the floor, then that's one of the indications that they're really unhappy and that something is going wrong for them. So keep an eye on those, make sure that you're monitoring. And it's not around saying, oh, well, why haven't you done better in that test? It's about saying, are you okay? Is there anything bothering you? And sometimes it isn't, you can't always have a conversation to do that. Sometimes it's around what in much younger children would be called parallel play. So there's an opportunity if you're washing up together to be doing that, or if you're doing some gardening together or creating something. Chores are a wonderful way, if you're actually doing them together, to have that conversation without actually looking at each other. And we often find a car journey can be a fabulous thing. And just getting them to explain the sort of things that they're looking at. If, for example, you're monitoring or keeping an eye on or listening to the music that they love or the films that they're watching or things like that, if there's a sudden change in the content of those in a way that is utterly inappropriate for their age and development, or is out of the sort of things that people their age would normally do, then it's worth knowing and being aware of that. So that's one of the things to look for. And the third one, the lovely calls from school. If you're suddenly getting lots of calls to say, oh, they've hit somebody, or they've trashed a room, or they're getting very sweary, or it's kind of related to behaviour, but it will be around, are school telling you that there's an issue? And if school are telling you that there's an issue, then it may well be that there's something in that situation that is making them feel overwhelmed and unable to cope. And often you can solve that by just solving the issues that are around that situation. And it may be that they're being bullied. Often that's the case, and that can cause a huge, huge amount of upset. Sleep. There's a good one. So if teenagers and sleep is always tricky. Assuming that you've not changed the amount of things that you allow them to watch or the time that they have access to computers or screens, if they are suddenly sleeping all the time or suddenly up when you wouldn't expect them to be and raiding the fridge, that's often a good one, then you know that something different is going on with sleep. And often that's either because they're engaged in something that is taking up time when they should be sleeping, so maybe they're playing a computer game all night and you might not be aware of that, or they might be really anxious, and it might be stopping them from falling asleep, or alternatively waking them up in the middle of the night. And that again is another indication of anxiety and something to watch for. And finally, of my top 5 things, is repeated illness. So if all of a sudden you have somebody who suddenly gets a lot of headaches, often that can be to do with the tension that's in the back of the neck. So if you have lots of nice relaxing baths, that can help to relieve that. If you have someone who has increased amounts of stomach aches, it's not necessarily that they're intentionally trying to get out of going to school, although that could be the case, but often it's because their level of uncomfortableness, their level of anxiety is so high that either they'll become explosive, or they'll become unresponsive, or they'll become ill. So if you think about raised cortisol levels, if you're highly stressed over a long period of time, you become more susceptible to illness. You become far more likely to be ill, and you would want to stay home longer to recover, because you need more time to recover because of the level of anxiety that's going on. So that's just 5 things to look for. So things that might give you an indication that things are going wrong. So in the next film, we'll talk a little bit about the stages that you should take and what you should do next as a result. So I'll look forward to talking to you about that. If you come to this film anywhere other than through the Different Joy Club, then by all means please go over to www.differentjoy.com/ADJ Club and sign up, and then you'll get the next lesson in the stream, next episode. I look forward to speaking to you. I really hope that's helped. I hope your children aren't suffering. If they are, be aware. And the most important thing, just one top tip, I will give you one top tip before we go, which is if you were to do just one thing, make a safe space for them. So make home a safe, welcoming, comforting place to be. Now that's not so that they don't feel confident to go out, because if you're comfortable one place, you will feel more comfortable to go out in other occasions. But everybody has to have somewhere safe to be. So that's my top tip for today. Take care. Speak to you very soon. Goodbye.